It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Adam had just finished dinner with Emma, his partner of 3 years. As they sat on the couch, Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at it, her face suddenly drained of color. Her voice was soft, but filled with a weight Adam had never heard before. "I think we need to talk." Adam's heart skipped a beat. The words felt like they froze the air between them. He looked at her, trying to process the sudden shift in the room. Emma placed her phone on the table and turned to face him, her eyes avoiding his. "I don't think I can do this anymore," she said, barely above a whisper. The room, once warm and comforting, now felt cold and alien. Adam opened his mouth to respond, but the words got stuck. He had known something was wrong, but this was the confirmation of everything he feared. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for her to continue, to explain, but the explanation never came. Instead, Emma stood up, her body stiff, and turned to leave. Adam sat there, numb. The truth settled heavily on him. He wasn't enough. Adam sat in the silence for what felt like hours. The world outside seemed to keep turning, but he felt frozen. He replayed the last few months in his mind, wondering where it had all gone wrong. He thought back to the days when everything felt effortless, when Emma would laugh at his jokes and their plans for the future seemed full of promise. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. He had felt it, but he had ignored it, believing love was enough to keep them together. Now, the pain of that realization hit him harder than anything he had ever known. "I wasn't enough for her," Adam whispered to himself, his voice hollow. He thought about the late-night talks they used to have, the quiet mornings where everything felt right. But now, it all seemed like a distant memory. He didn't know what had changed, but he knew that Emma wasn't the same person anymore. And the hardest part? He wasn't sure if he could ever get back to who they were, even if he wanted to. The next few days were a blur of silent meals and awkward conversations. Adam tried, desperately, to hold on, suggesting they go out to dinner or take a walk like they used to. But each time Emma seemed distant, her eyes not fully meeting his. It wasn't just the physical distance, it was the emotional barrier she had built. Adam could feel it, and no matter how hard he tried, it was like she had already mentally checked out. "Emma," Adam finally said one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's happening to us?" Emma didn't respond immediately, her hands nervously playing with her phone. Finally she spoke, her words heavy and measured. "I don't think we're the same anymore, Adam. I need more. I need more than what we have." His chest tightened as the weight of her words sank in. "More than what we have," he repeated, his heart breaking. "Isn't this enough?" But in her silence, Adam knew the answer. Adam couldn't escape the gnawing feeling of inadequacy. He was doing everything he could to make her happy, but it never seemed to be enough. Every time he tried to fix things, he felt like he was just digging a deeper hole. Late one night as he sat in front of his computer, staring at a blank document, his thoughts overwhelmed him. He hadn't realized how much of himself he had given to this relationship, how much of his own identity had been wrapped up in making Emma happy. "Why can't I just fix this?" he muttered to himself. His mind raced with the doubt. What was wrong with him? Had he really failed her? Was he too broken to be the man she needed? The answers never came, only more questions. He felt lost, like he was trying to hold on to sand that slipped through his fingers no matter how tight he gripped. Adam stood in the doorway, watching as Emma packed her bags. He could barely breathe, the weight of the moment crushing him. His mind raced for words, for anything that might stop her from leaving. "Emma, please." His voice broke, but she didn't look up. "We've tried, Adam," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I just don't feel the way I used to. I can't keep pretending." Adam felt his world shatter in an instant. The love he thought was unbreakable had cracked, and there was no going back. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered, the words escaping before he could stop them. Emma paused, finally looking at him with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Sometimes love isn't enough, Adam." Those words echoed in his mind as she finished packing and walked out the door, leaving Adam standing alone in the quiet, empty space that was once filled with everything he thought he needed. The days that followed Emma's departure felt like weeks. The apartment, once filled with laughter and conversations, now echoed with silence. Adam moved through each day like a ghost, his routine unchanged but his heart broken. He tried to fill the void by keeping busy, going to work, running errands, but nothing felt real anymore. At night he would sit in the same spot on the couch where they used to talk for hours, now just staring at the blank TV. He reached for his phone to text her but stopped, knowing the message would go unread. Emma was gone. "I miss her so much," he whispered into the stillness, but no one answered back. The silence weighed on him, and the loneliness crept deeper. Every moment without her was a reminder that something was missing, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to fill the space she left behind. A week later, Adam found himself pacing around his apartment. He couldn't stand the quiet anymore. The unanswered texts and missed calls had piled up, and he needed to know if there was still any chance. Maybe, if I just apologize, if I can make her see how much I care. But the doubts crept in. Was it really enough to just apologize? Emma had said she needed more, but what did that even mean? Adam couldn't understand. Was love not enough? He spent hours on his phone, composing and deleting messages to her, never knowing the right words to say. Finally, he pressed send on a simple message. "I miss you. Can we talk?" He stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar notification to pop up. Nothing. Not a single reply. Adam sat back, his heart sinking deeper into the despair that seemed to surround him. Days turned into weeks and Adam's hope began to fade. He still couldn't understand what went wrong, but the more time passed, the clearer it became that Emma wasn't coming back. They hadn't spoken since that night she left. Adam had tried everything to fill the void, but nothing worked. The apartment felt too big now, too empty. He had never realized how much he relied on her presence, her laughter, and even the way she would look at him when he was lost in thought. Without her, it felt like something essential had been ripped away. He found himself staring at old photos of them together, memories that now seemed distant and out of reach. He could see the love in their eyes, but now all he felt was pain. What was missing? He couldn't stop asking himself that. But even if he knew, would it even matter? One night, after yet another failed attempt to reach Emma, Adam couldn't take it anymore. He collapsed onto the couch, his hands gripping his hair in frustration. "Why am I not enough for her?" he muttered, tears streaming down his face. The questions haunted him and he couldn't escape them. Why wasn't I enough? The silence around him seemed to suffocate him, pressing in on all sides. His mind raced with thoughts of what he could have done differently. Maybe he hadn't been attentive enough. Maybe he didn't show her enough affection. Maybe he was too selfish. Maybe he wasn't enough. The weight of that thought shattered him. In that moment, Adam realized that he had placed all his self-worth in Emma's hands. And now, with her gone, he didn't know who he was anymore. Adam finally accepted that Emma wasn't coming back. He had waited, hoped, and tried to fix things, but in the end, it wasn't enough. The silence between them became a permanent fixture in his life. He kept himself busy with work, barely talking to anyone outside of it. The world seemed to move on without him. There were moments when he could almost forget the hurt, but they were fleeting. His mind would always return to her, to their last conversation, to the painful truth he had finally accepted. That love, no matter how deep, couldn't fix everything. Adam no longer believed that love was enough. He had given it his all, but sometimes, love couldn't heal the wounds that existed between them. Weeks had passed since Adam had last seen Emma, and he was beginning to feel the weight of the silence between them. He couldn't stand it any longer. One evening as he sat alone in the dark, his phone buzzed. It was Emma's number. His heart raced as he quickly answered, hoping this was the moment things would be set right. "Emma," he said, his voice shaky. "I've been waiting for you to call. Please, let's talk. I can't do this without you." There was a long pause before she finally spoke, her voice distant. "Adam, I don't think we're right for each other anymore." The words hit him like a blow to the chest. His heart sank, and the desperation inside him surged. "Please, Emma. I can change. I'll do whatever it takes. Just tell me what you need." But Emma didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her words were clear and resolute. "It's not about what I need anymore, Adam. It's about what I can give. And I can't give anymore." Adam's world crumbled once again as her words sank in. Adam tried to reach Emma again, but she never responded. The unanswered calls and ignored texts piled up, and with every silent moment, the bitterness grew. "Why is she doing this to me?" he thought as he stared at his phone, the screen lit up with the absence of her presence. He knew she was avoiding him. But why? Wasn't love supposed to be enough? Wasn't he enough? Every thought led to more questions, all unanswerable. He began to spiral into self-doubt, replaying every argument, every small moment where he might have failed her. It wasn't long before the resentment began to fester. "She doesn't even care," Adam muttered to himself. The loneliness now a thick fog that clouded his mind. He tried to focus on work, on anything that would distract him, but nothing worked. The more he tried, the more resentful he became. Not just of Emma, but of himself for not being the person she needed. Adam saw Emma one afternoon at the grocery store. Their eyes met across the aisle, and for a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. But the moment quickly passed. Emma lowered her gaze and turned to walk away. Adam's heart raced as he approached her, his breath shaky. "Emma, please," he started, his voice trembling. "Can we talk? I just want to understand." She stopped, her back to him, and for a moment, Adam thought she might turn around. But then, without a word, she continued walking. "Emma, please," he called after her, but she didn't stop. The distance between them, once just physical, had now grown emotional and unbridgeable. Adam stood there in the middle of the store, paralyzed by the hurt. He felt the full weight of the separation, realizing that the person he had loved so deeply was slipping further and further away. Back home, Adam sat in the silence again. He stared at the walls, thinking back to every word they had shared, every laugh they had had. "What did I miss? What did I do wrong?" he asked himself, his voice barely a whisper. His thoughts began to spiral, focusing on every flaw in their relationship. Maybe he wasn't attentive enough. Maybe he didn't listen when she needed him to. Or worse, maybe he had taken her love for granted. "I could have done more," he thought. He could have been a better partner. But now, all he had were regrets. Regrets for the things left unsaid, for the mistakes he didn't realize he was making until it was too late. He sat there, consumed by guilt, wondering if there was a way to turn back time. The weeks dragged on, and Adam began to accept the painful truth: he couldn't fix what was broken. His texts went unanswered, and his attempts to talk only pushed Emma further away. Every time he saw her name on his phone, his heart would race, but when he opened the messages, it was always empty. He had tried everything to make her stay, but nothing seemed to work. The silence between them had become a constant, painful reminder of the emotional distance they now shared. "I don't know what to do anymore," Adam whispered one night, his voice raw with frustration. "I've given everything I can, but it's not enough." His chest tightened as the reality of the situation sank in. Adam knew the truth: love, no matter how deep, couldn't change the past or heal the wounds they had both caused. Adam could no longer avoid the truth. One evening, after days of restless thoughts, he found himself sitting in front of his phone, staring at Emma's contact. He had to face the reality that no matter how much he loved her, it wasn't enough. He typed a message to her, knowing it would be the last time he tried to reach out. "I just need to know if this is really the end, Emma. I don't want to keep living in limbo. If we can fix this, I need to let go." He pressed send, his heart pounding, but he knew that no matter her response, it wouldn't change what had already been broken. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma didn't respond. Adam stared at the screen for what felt like hours. And in that moment he finally understood. Love, no matter how deep, couldn't always heal the wounds between them. Sometimes, love wasn't enough. The days that followed felt like a blur. Adam went through the motions of work, meals, and sleep, but everything felt numb. He had tried everything, every apology, every grand gesture, every attempt to fix what was broken, but nothing worked. One evening he stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. "What happened to me?" he asked softly. He had become someone he didn't recognize, lost in the pursuit of something he couldn't control. He felt exposed, vulnerable, like he had given so much of himself to the relationship that there was nothing left. Emma's absence was a constant ache in his chest, and it was hard to breathe without feeling the weight of it. "I can't keep pretending," Adam whispered to his reflection. "I don't know how to fix this, but I can't keep carrying it either." He took a deep breath, finally accepting that the pain of this relationship might be the thing that would change him. As the weeks passed, Adam couldn't stop reflecting on the past. What had gone wrong? Why hadn't they been able to make it work? He remembered Emma's words. "It's not about what I need anymore, Adam. It's about what I can give." Those words haunted him, making him question everything. He had tried so hard to be what she needed, but he had failed. The deeper he dug into his thoughts, the clearer it became. He wasn't enough. The question lingered in his mind like a shadow, and with it came a deeper fear. Was he too broken to ever be enough for anyone? It wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about him. The realization was brutal but necessary. He had to let go, not just of Emma, but of the person he had become in her absence. The final conversation between Adam and Emma came unexpectedly. Adam had been preparing himself, trying to accept that they would never be the same again, but hearing her voice one last time made everything real. "I think it's time, Adam," Emma said, her voice filled with a mix of sadness and finality. "I can't keep doing this. I don't think we can fix it. I need to move on." Adam's heart shattered as he listened to her words. He didn't fight it. There was no more fight left in him. "I understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I just want you to be happy, Emma." The silence after those words was heavier than anything he had ever felt. Adam hung up the phone, his body sinking into the couch. The finality of it hit him hard, and all he could do was sit there in the emptiness, realizing that this was it. They had both let go. In the days that followed, Adam wandered through his apartment like a stranger in his own life. The pain wasn't just physical anymore. It was deep in his bones. He had tried to stay strong, to pick himself up, but nothing felt right. The apartment that had once been a home now felt like a cage. The memories of Emma, of their time together, their love, still lingered in the corners of the space. But there was no one to share them with anymore. Adam sat down at the kitchen table, staring at an old picture of them, the edges worn from time. "It's over," he whispered to himself. "And I'm not enough." For the first time he let the tears fall, not just for Emma, but for the person he had lost in the process. After weeks of struggling, Adam decided to take a step back. He couldn't keep living in the past, in the memories of what he had with Emma. He needed to figure out who he was without her. For the first time in months, he left the apartment and walked to the nearby park. The air was fresh, and the sounds of life, birds chirping, children laughing, filled him with a strange sense of calm. Sitting on a bench, Adam closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting the world move around him. "Who am I without her?" he thought. He had spent so much time trying to be the man Emma needed that he had lost sight of who he was. The pain of the breakup still lingered, but Adam knew that healing couldn't begin until he stopped clinging to the past. He needed to find himself again, independent of her. As the days passed, Adam made small changes. He started running in the mornings, something he hadn't done in years. The exercise gave him a sense of control, of progress. His thoughts, though still heavy, were no longer constantly consumed by Emma. One evening, as he sat on the couch with a book he had never read before, he realized something. He had been living for someone else for so long, trying to fill a void that only he could heal. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. "Maybe this is what I needed all along," he thought. To find myself, to be whole again. Adam wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing. He couldn't keep clinging to the past. He had to start living for himself. Adam hadn't realized how isolated he had become until one of his friends, Michael, invited him out for drinks. "You've been me a man. Let's go grab a beer," Michael had said, and Adam reluctantly agreed. As they sat at the bar, Adam found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done in what felt like forever. The conversations were easy, the company comforting. He realized how much he had withdrawn from his friends after the breakup, losing himself in the pain of what had happened. But here, in this moment, surrounded by laughter and familiar faces, Adam remembered what it felt like to be part of something bigger. He was no longer alone. For the first time in weeks, Adam felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't as lost as he thought. Maybe he could rebuild piece by piece. Months passed, and Adam's life slowly began to shift. He found solace in his routine, in the little moments that brought him peace. He took up painting again, a hobby he had neglected for years, and began to explore the things that made him feel fulfilled outside of his relationship. One day, as he stood in front of a canvas, the brush in his hand moving fluidly, he realized something important. He was healing. The emotional weight of the breakup had lessened, replaced by a quiet understanding of who he was. He didn't need to be defined by his relationship with Emma anymore. He was still Adam, still worthy of love, and still capable of creating a meaningful life. It wasn't the life he thought he would have, but it was his, and that was enough. One afternoon, as Adam sat in his favorite park, he thought about Emma. The pain of their separation was still there, but it no longer consumed him. He had come to terms with the fact that their love had run its course. "I forgive you, Emma," Adam whispered, the words soft but powerful. He realized that holding on to resentment and regret was only keeping him trapped in the past. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what had happened. It meant letting go of the emotional burden that had weighed him down. As he looked up at the clear sky, he felt lighter. He was ready to move on, not because Emma was gone, but because he had forgiven himself. He could now truly begin the next chapter of his life. It was an ordinary Saturday morning when Adam ran into Emma again. It had been months since they last spoke, and he wasn't expecting to see her that day. As he walked into the small cafe he frequented, the bell above the door jingled, and there she was, standing in line. His heart skipped a beat. She was still the same, her long brown hair cascading down her back, her figure still graceful and familiar. But there was something different about her now. The distance between them had grown, and it wasn't just the space of months. It was the emotional distance they had both needed to heal. Their eyes met, and for a moment Adam froze, unsure of what to say or do. Emma's eyes softened, her lips curving into a tentative smile. "Adam," she said, her voice quiet but warm. "Hey." The simple greeting was like a bridge, connecting the two of them in that fleeting moment. But both of them knew this wasn't just a casual encounter. It was the first time since their breakup that they would truly face each other, not as lovers, but as two people who had once shared everything. Adam's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Hey Emma, it's good to see you," he said, his voice steady but uncertain. After a few awkward moments of silence, Adam and Emma found themselves sitting at a small table in the back of the cafe. Neither of them knew what to say, but the conversation eventually found its way. They talked about life since the breakup, the little things that had changed, the milestones they had reached, and the lessons they had learned. Emma laughed at one of Adam's jokes, and for a brief moment, it felt like nothing had changed between them. The air was lighter, but both of them knew it was different this time. "You seem different," Adam said quietly, studying Emma's face. She smiled wistfully, her eyes reflecting a depth of thought. "I think we both are," she said. "Time changes things, Adam. People grow, and sometimes that growth leads us in different directions." The words hung in the air, but there was no bitterness in her tone, only acceptance. Adam nodded slowly, realizing how much he had changed too. He wasn't the same man who had desperately tried to hold on to her. "I'm glad to see you're okay," Adam said, his voice full of sincerity. "I'm glad you're happy." As they spoke, Adam found himself recalling old memories they had shared. It wasn't something he had thought about in a long time. "Remember the trip we took to the lake?" Adam asked, a soft smile tugging at his lips. Emma's eyes brightened at the memory, and she laughed softly. "How could I forget? You were so determined to teach me how to fish, and I was terrified of the worms." They both laughed, the sound filling the air around them, and for a brief moment it felt like the past was alive again. Emma's expression softened. "We had some good times, didn't we?" she asked, her voice quiet. Adam nodded. "Yeah, we did." The memory wasn't painful anymore. It was a reminder of what they once had. Emma was no longer the woman he longed to be with, but she would always be a part of him. Adam smiled gently, a sense of peace washing over him. "I think I've finally come to terms with everything, Emma. It wasn't easy, but I'm okay now." Emma reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his. "I'm glad," she said softly. "You deserve happiness, Adam." The conversation began to wind down, and Adam felt a sense of closure he hadn't expected. "It feels good to talk like this," Emma said, her voice almost nostalgic. "I've missed this." Adam smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in months. "Yeah, me too." They both sat in a comfortable silence for a moment, just soaking in the connection they still shared. But then, Adam felt a slight catch in his throat. "I'm sorry for everything," he said quietly. "For not being the person you needed me to be." Emma's eyes softened. "You didn't need to be sorry, Adam. We were just at different places, and that's okay. We both grew, just in different directions." Adam nodded, his throat tight with emotion. It was the first time in a long while that he had felt truly understood. "Thank you," Adam whispered. For the first time, he let go of the guilt he had been carrying for so long. He wasn't perfect, but he was learning to accept himself. As the conversation came to a close, Emma stood up first. "I think it's time I go," she said, her smile gentle. Adam stood up too, his heart full but calm. "Yeah, I think so." They shared one last hug, an embrace that wasn't filled with longing, but with mutual respect and understanding. Adam felt the last of the tension in his body melt away. As Emma walked out of the cafe, he realized that he had found closure, not in an explosive confrontation or grand gesture, but in the quiet, peaceful acceptance of their past. He had loved her, but now it was time to move forward. As Adam walked out of the cafe, the world outside seemed a little brighter. He wasn't looking back anymore, he was ready for the future. It had been several months since Adam last saw Emma. The days, once heavy with grief, now flowed more easily. He had learned to find joy in the little things again, the sound of birds chirping in the morning, the quiet of the evening, the soft glow of the sunrise as he ran through the park. He still thought about Emma, but it no longer hurt. He smiled at the thought of her, thankful for the moments they had shared, but knowing that their paths had to separate. It was only in those quiet moments of reflection that Adam realized how far he had come. "I don't need her to complete me anymore," Adam whispered to himself one evening. "I'm enough on my own." He stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, and felt a profound sense of peace. The pain that once filled his chest had been replaced by a quiet confidence. He had finally found himself again. And this time, he was ready for whatever came next. He didn't have to be afraid of starting over. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his, and that made it beautiful. One night, as Adam sat on the couch with a cup of tea in his hands, he reflected on the road he had traveled. He thought about his time with Emma, the good moments, and the hard ones. He remembered their laughter, their long walks in the park, and the way her eyes lit up when they talked about the future. But then he also thought about the silence that had crept in, the way they grew apart slowly, like two separate paths. It wasn't anyone's fault, he realized. They had simply grown in different directions. "We had our time," Adam whispered to himself. "And that's okay." He wasn't bitter anymore. He didn't hold on to resentment or anger. The past had shaped him, but it didn't define him. he could still appreciate the love they shared without feeling the weight of its loss. "It wasn't always easy," Adam said with a soft laugh, "but I wouldn't change a thing." He finished his tea and set the cup down on the table, standing up to face the future with a sense of gratitude. Adam continued to grow, not just in his personal life but in his career as well. He had thrown himself into his work, taking on new projects and challenges that pushed him beyond his comfort zone. He was no longer just going through the motions, he was thriving. One afternoon, as he sat in his office, staring at a new project he had just been given, he realized how far he had come. The nervous energy he used to feel was gone, replaced by a steady confidence. He had found his rhythm. "This is what I've been waiting for," he thought. "Not just in my career but in my life." Adam had learned that happiness didn't come from anyone else, it came from within. He had learned to take care of himself, to find fulfillment in the things he loved, and to be proud of who he was becoming. He wasn't perfect, but he was better than he had been. "I'm doing it," he said quietly, a smile tugging at his lips. "I'm living my life. On my own terms." One evening, as Adam walked through the park he had often visited with Emma, he stopped by the lake where they once sat for hours, talking about their dreams and hopes. He gazed at the calm water, the reflection of the moon shimmering softly on its surface. A sense of calm washed over him as he remembered the person he had been back then, vulnerable, full of hope, but also unsure. He realized that, in a way, that person was still inside him. He had grown, he had learned, and he had healed, but he was still the same person, just a little wiser. "Love isn't always about being with someone," Adam said softly, the wind brushing against his face. "Sometimes it's about learning to love yourself, about becoming who you're meant to be." He smiled, feeling the full weight of that truth. Adam had finally found peace, not just with his past, but with who he was becoming. He wasn't the same person he was when he was with Emma. He was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The next chapter of Adam's life was just beginning. He still had moments of doubt, of course, but they no longer defined him. He had learned to embrace the uncertainty and the changes that came with it. He had discovered that life wasn't about having everything figured out. It was about embracing the journey, accepting the imperfections, and moving forward with courage. One afternoon, as he sat on his balcony, looking out at the city skyline, Adam thought about the future. It was wide open, full of possibilities. He didn't know exactly where he was headed, but he knew it would be somewhere better than where he had been. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," he said with a quiet sense of determination. "I don't have to have all the answers, I just need to keep moving forward." And with that, Adam took a deep breath, knowing that whatever happened next, he was ready to face it.